The Vanderbilt Hotel's grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the murmur of 500 of the city's elite. James Mitchell, a successful investment banker, stood near the bar with a scotch in hand, watching his wife of 8 years navigate the room with practiced grace. Victoria looked stunning in her emerald gown, her blonde hair swept elegantly to one side, the platinum wedding band catching the light as she gestured animatedly to colleagues. He'd been preoccupied all evening, a merger deal consuming his thoughts. They'd barely spoken before arriving. Victoria had seemed distant lately, burying herself in her interior design business, spending late nights at client meetings. James had chalked it up to her ambitious nature, something he'd always admired about her. Then everything changed. Victoria excused herself from her conversation and walked deliberately to the center of the ballroom where the orchestra was taking a break. She raised her hand, and the diamond engagement ring caught everyone's attention as she slipped off her wedding band. The gesture was deliberate, theatrical, designed to be noticed. "Excuse me, everyone," she announced, her voice cutting through the ambient noise. "I need to make an announcement. Effective immediately, I'm single tonight." She held up her bare left ring finger and smiled enigmatically. No complications, no commitment. Just me being free. The room fell silent. Some guests exchanged confused glances. Whispers rippled like wildfire across the ballroom. James felt his chest tighten, his jaw clenching. Blood rushed to his face. Around him, people were watching his reaction. He could see the curiosity and pity in their eyes. The famous investment banker being humiliated by his wife in front of half of Manhattan's business elite. His first instinct was to storm over, to grab her wrist, to demand an explanation. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped his scotch glass. Several colleagues approached, offering uncomfortable, sympathetic comments. "That's interesting," someone muttered. Another laughed nervously. But James took a breath. Through the haze of anger and embarrassment, something else emerged. Curiosity. What was Victoria doing? Was this a performance? A test? An announcement of something more? He set down his glass carefully and decided to watch, to wait, to show everyone, including his wife, that he wouldn't crumble, that he was still in control, that this game, whatever it was, had just become infinitely more interesting. He straightened his tie, allowed a composed smile to cross his face, and turned back to the bar. The evening was far from over. Victoria had always been a risk-taker, but James had never seen her push this far. As the night wore on, she orbited the room like a woman rediscovering her identity, laughing a little too loudly at jokes, touching men's arms as she spoke, making a point to be seen without her wedding ring. James observed from strategic distances, nursing his drink, speaking with business associates while maintaining peripheral awareness of every move she made. She was performing, absolutely, but the question that gnawed at him was why, and for whom? Around midnight, a man approached Victoria at the bar, someone James recognized. Adrian Cole, a venture capitalist in his early 40s, dashingly handsome in a way that made James's stomach turn. Adrian was known for his affairs, his casual arrogance, his ability to seduce powerful women. James had always found him insufferable. He watched as Adrian leaned close to Victoria, as she laughed and touched his arm, as Adrian's hand found the small of her bare back where her dress dipped low. The intimacy of the gesture made James's blood boil. But he didn't react. Instead, he did something he hadn't done in months. He strategically positioned himself near an attractive woman from his office, Rebecca, who'd been trying to get his attention for weeks. She was intelligent, striking, and available. As Adrian and Victoria disappeared toward the terrace, James accepted Rebecca's invitation to dance. The music was slow, sensual. Rebecca moved close, her hand on his shoulder, her body aligned with his in a way that felt dangerously intimate. She smelled like expensive perfume and ambition. As they swayed, James allowed himself to be present in the moment, to feel the flutter of attention, the thrill of being desired, the electricity of playing a dangerous game. "You're a good dancer," Rebecca whispered, her lips near his ear. "I've always thought so." James didn't pull away. He let her believe he was interested. Around the room, he caught sight of Victoria emerging from the terrace, Adrian's hands still on her back. She froze when she saw him dancing with Rebecca, saw how close Rebecca was, how intimate the moment appeared. Victoria's expression shifted. The confident smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered, but James had seen it. The crack in her armor, the jealousy, the recognition that her game had just become a competition. She'd thrown down the gauntlet. Now he was playing too. Rebecca excused herself as the song ended, but not before pressing her phone number into his jacket pocket. James felt the weight of it, the implication, the dangerous possibility of what might happen next. He turned to search for Victoria in the crowd, wondering if she had watched the entire exchange, wondering what she was thinking, wondering how far either of them was willing to go to win this twisted game they'd started.
The limousine ride home was tense, suffocated by silence and unsaid words. Victoria stared out the window, the city lights reflecting off her face. Her hands were folded in her lap, her jaw tight. The wedding ring remained absent from her finger, a deliberate void between them. James sat across from her, his tie loosened, his mind racing. The chauffeur maintained professional silence as they navigated the streets of the Upper East Side. "You seemed to enjoy yourself," Victoria finally said, her voice sharp as cut glass. "Rebecca is quite beautiful." "She is," James replied calmly, refusing to offer more. "You seemed to enjoy the terrace with Adrian." Victoria's eyes snapped to his. "So you were watching?" "I watch everything, Victoria. I notice when my wife of 8 years announces to 500 people that she's single. I notice who touches her. I notice what she's doing when she thinks I'm not looking." Victoria turned fully toward him, her emerald eyes blazing. "And what conclusion did you reach?" "That something's changed. That you're testing me. Or testing yourself." He paused. "That maybe we've both been so buried in work that we forgot what keeps couples tethered." Victoria's face softened for a moment, vulnerability crossing her features, before she armored herself again. "Adrian told me something interesting tonight. He said he'd been watching me for months, waiting for an opening. He said he knew what I wanted because I was too polite to ask for it." James felt his stomach drop. "And what do you want?" "To feel alive again," Victoria whispered. "To feel wanted. To feel like I matter as a woman, not just as your wife." The words hit harder than any slap. James reached for her hand, but she pulled away. When they arrived home, Victoria went directly to their bedroom and locked the door, a first in their marriage. James sat in the dark living room, her words echoing. Around 2 a.m., after several glasses of whiskey, he found himself texting Rebecca, "Would you like coffee tomorrow?" The response came within minutes. "I thought you'd never ask." As he set down his phone, he realized he'd crossed a line. Not in action, but in intention. He'd taken his wife's provocation and transformed it into something real, something that would demand consequences. The next morning, Victoria emerged from the bedroom wearing a casual dress, her hair down, her face freshly made up. She didn't mention the locked door or the text message he left on the kitchen counter, but her eyes were different, wary, calculating, desperate. "Where are you going?" she asked as he prepared to leave. "For coffee," he said simply. "With Rebecca." Victoria's face went pale. "James, you wanted to feel alive, Victoria." "So did I." The coffee date with Rebecca evolved into lunch, then into drinks after work at a hotel bar downtown. She was entertaining, smart, and unquestionably interested in crossing lines. But as James sat across from her in a dimly lit booth, he realized the game had shifted from his marriage to something more dangerous, a point of no return. Rebecca's hand found his on the table. Her fingers traced lazy patterns on his palm. "There's a room upstairs," she said softly. "We could—" But James pulled his hand away gently. "I need to tell you something. I'm married. Complicated situation, but married." Rebecca smiled knowingly. "I know. That's part of what makes this exciting."
James felt something break inside him. This was what they'd become, a couple playing with fire, inviting destruction, using strangers as weapons against each other. He excused himself and left. He drove to his office, locked the door, and sat in darkness. His phone buzzed repeatedly, Rebecca texting, the office messaging app, then a call from Victoria. "Where are you?" Her voice was tight, controlled. "The office. I went for a drive after coffee." "Liar," she said flatly. "I called Rebecca. She told me you were with her for drinks, that she tried to invite you to a hotel room." The confession hung between them like a sword. James felt relief wash over him. The game was ending. The pretense was crumbling. "I didn't," he said quietly. "I walked away." "But you wanted to," Victoria accused. "Part of you wanted to." "Yes," I admitted, "because the other part of me wanted to hurt you the way your announcement hurt me." Silence. Then Victoria's voice, small and fractured. "Adrian wanted to sleep with me. On the terrace. He said we could be quick, that you'd never know. And for a moment, I actually considered it." "Did you?" James asked, not sure which answer he wanted to hear. "No, but it wasn't because of you. It was because I realized that revenge tastes like poison, and I didn't want to be someone who poisons our marriage just because you weren't paying enough attention." James felt his eyes burn. "I wasn't paying attention, I know that. I was so focused on the merger, on work, on proving myself again and again, that I forgot to prove myself to you. I put off that ring because I wanted to feel invisible to you first, to see if you'd notice I was slipping away. And you didn't, not until I made a spectacle of myself."
They met at home that evening as the sun slipped toward the horizon. Victoria was sitting in the living room in soft candlelight, the television dark, classical music playing softly. She wore a simple, cream-colored slip dress, her hair down, her face bare of makeup. James stood in the doorway, suddenly aware of every moment they'd almost thrown away, every inch of distance they'd created. "I saw Adrian," Victoria said before he could speak. "I told him we were working on things. He said he understood. He said he always knew I was the kind of woman who'd choose commitment over chaos." "And Rebecca?" "Called me," Victoria continued, "apologized, said she didn't realize how much was at stake until you left. She's transferring offices." James moved toward the couch, sitting beside his wife but not touching her. "The wedding ring?" Victoria extended her left hand. The band was back, glinting in the candlelight. "I put it on an hour ago, not because I'm fixed, not because the problems disappear, but because I realized that you and this," she gestured between them, "is worth fighting for instead of running from." "I've been taking our marriage for granted," James said, "assuming that loving you meant showing up, providing, protecting. But I stopped seeing you, really seeing you." Victoria took his hand, placing it on her chest, over her heart. "What are you feeling right now?" "Fear," he admitted. "Regret. But also possibility. Like maybe we can rebuild this into something stronger." "We won't rebuild," Victoria said softly. "We'll build something new, something that accommodates who we've both become." She kissed him then, slowly, deliberately. Not the kiss of a couple rekindling old passion, but of two people choosing each other consciously. It deepened, became less about apology and more about affirmation. James's hands found her waist, drawing her closer. She straddled him, her fingers tracing the contours of his face, his neck, remembering his landscape as though seeing it for the first time. Their intimacy that night wasn't frantic or desperate. It was methodical, intentional, a conversation expressed through touch. Every kiss was a commitment. Every caress was a negotiation of their future. Afterward, they lay tangled together as the candles burned down, the music still playing softly. "I don't want to go back to how we were," Victoria whispered against his chest. "I don't either," James agreed. "I want to build something better. But it requires showing up, every day. Truly showing up. No more taking each other for granted?" "No more," he promised. "Even when things are hard. Maybe especially then." Victoria lifted her head, looking at him in the dim light. "The wedding ring stays on?" James reached for her left hand, bringing it to his lips and kissing the band. "It stays on, if you want it to." "I want it to," she said, "but differently. Not as a cage, as a choice I make every single day." They fell asleep like that, intertwined, the crisis having burned away everything unnecessary between them. The marriage that emerged from that night's fire was tender and conscious, built not on assumptions, but on radical honesty and deliberate commitment. Neither of them mentioned the engagement party again, but they both remembered the moment they'd nearly lost everything. Remembered that sometimes marriages need to burn down to be rebuilt into something real.